And so on this, to do follows, what we want to have is a connector table, which is going to go from one application user to a room, right? Because a room is going to be what gets the follows. So let's create a new entity in here called follow. And this is a public, and it's a base entity. And in this, we want to have a GUID, which will be for the room ID. Do you have add genres to rooms? Yeah, right here. And the next thing that you want to have is another GUID for a application user ID. So then we need to have the opposite, so the room and the application user. And this will include a date. Do you want to unfollow it? I think if you unfollowed it, you would delete it. So now in here, we want to, under follows, have this in the database table called follows. And then in application user, we want to have a I collection here of follow called follows. And then we're going to do the same thing in a room. That should be it. So now what we need to do is we need to add that onto the application database context, which I can do that under room called follows. And then I want to, under my library, create a new follow DTO, which is a public class of a base DTO. And then also I want to have a new follow VM, which is a public, and it's a base VM. And on this we want to have a application user DTO called application user and a room DTO called room. The next thing that we need to do is have a create. So this is a follow create request. Like that. And on this, we want to have a GUID for my room ID. We also want to have a GUID here for the application user ID. And we don't need that actually. Okay, and then finally, on the auto mapper, we need to add in, under room, this new which will be changed to follow. like that. Okay. So now, when I look at my VMs at my room, I want to have a prop int called number follows. And we'll also do that on room here. And then in my data access layer, when I'm retrieving that, you're including the room here. And now I want to get a var follow count equals await context.follows.where my application user ID, where your room ID is equal to entity.room.id, and it's active, and that's a toList asynchronous. Nope, that's a count asynchronous. And then here, this is a vm.followCount. vm.room.followCount. Number follows equals follow count. So on the front side, under my interfaces, where I have iRoom, I want to add in here a number follows, which is an integer, a number. Okay, the next place is we have another read application user here. And same thing, var follow count equals await my context.follows.where my s.room ID is equal to entity.room.id dot count asynchronous. And then it's a vm.room.followCount equals follow count. Under read profile, we need to do the same thing again here, which is going to be a var follow count equals await your context.follows.where my s.room ID is equal to entity.room.id, and it's active. And we want to do a count asynchronous on that. And then here I'll do a profile dot vm dot number follows equals follow count. So on this one we need to add in here an int called number follows. And the same thing on profile DTO, which I don't have, which is fine. So in here we need to look for iProfile, and we need to have a number follows, which is a number. This one you're including the room. So I feel like you want to include the number of follows here. And it's your context.follows.where my s.room ID is equal to room. It's your entity.room.id, and it's active. And we want to do a count asynchronous on that. I also think that when you're getting this room on this one, on this one where you're reading your application user room, we're not actually getting it for everything. We're only getting the... See, we're including room, but we're not including all the pieces of room, because room should also have this and then it has room image been reported. Like that. And then this is a vr.room.has room image been reported equals has room image been reported, and then a room dot. And the last one was this number follows. So that looks better. This one, you're clearing your room key. Okay. This is the next one. Same thing. And then we want to do these two after the fact on the room. And then the same thing on this one. And then these two. Read application users room online. So it's getting all of your connections here. It's online, and then you're mapping it across here. You're not including room, so that's okay. And then the only other places in here are in the create and update room, these ones. So when you're reading your rooms, sorry, it was this one. Hey there, Great Gamer. How are you doing today? Welcome back. And we're going to put this one in read rooms asynchronous. Has it been reported as false? This one also includes a number of users online in room VM. Does room have that? Number of users online. So we'll get rid of that one. This is good. We've already done this one. But we do want our number follows. Like that. And then this one we want to add to the top ones here, which was a read application user. And then this is my vm.room.number users online equals users online. We want to add that one in here. vm.room.users online equals users online. This one needs to have the users online. vm.user, nope, that one doesn't have it, so we're okay there. This one, we want to add in here vm.room.users online equals users online. Same thing here. vm.room.users online equals users online. Same thing with this one. vm.room.users online equals users online. Last one here. It seems like this one should include a room, but I think it's okay. That one's fine. Okay, the next one here is read room. We have number of users online. We need to have number of follows. Same thing here. Has room image been reported? vm.has room image been reported is done here. I think that's it. Okay, the next thing is we need to have an endpoint. So the first one is in the data access layer. We're going to add down here a task of a follow Do I want to return a follow? Probably. Task of a follow VM called read follow asynchronous of my GUID room ID. Sorry, it's my GUID follow ID. And then you want to have a task here of a follow DTO called read follows asynchronous of a GUID room ID. And you want to have another one for the application user ID. So read follows by application user ID. And this is by room ID. And then you also want to have a create follow asynchronous, which is a create follow request, or a follow create request, and then a task of a bool called a delete follow asynchronous of a GUID of a follow ID and a GUID of my application user ID. And this one wants to have a GUID of the application user ID as well. Okay, so now in the Web API, underneath my hub, for room, where you have my connect, we connect to a room here. And then this is where I'm returning it. That looks fine. Wait, why am I reading the room again here? After I check to see if it's the owner, I get the currencies, I add it to the group. Because that comes from room entity, which is based upon this application user room. Yeah, that makes sense. And then that looks fine too. So underneath this one, we should have a request rooms. This should include the number of follows. So in Room Hub, we want to have a public async task called request follow. And then you're also going to want to get a public asynchronous task called request unfollow. So we'll have this try catch in here. And in this I want to have a GUID for the ID, which will be my room ID. And then in this one, we're going to do a var user ID equals await get user ID asynchronous. And then I want to do a await my data access layer dot create follow asynchronous. And that's going to be a new follow create request, which includes a room ID and then the application user ID. And then I want to do a await clients.caller .send asynchronous. Receive follow, and we want to pass in the follow. Okay. We also want to update the owner. So I want to get my var room equals await my data access layer dot read room asynchronous of my room ID. Like that. And then you're going to do a clients. No, now you want to do a var connections owner equals await your data access layer dot read connections. And this one has an overload of a connection ID, which isn't what I want. I want to do a read application user room owner by my room ID. So this is going to be my application user room owner VM. And then I want to do my connections equals await my data access layer dot read application user connections by application user room ID. And we want to do that for my application user room owner VM dot ID. And then I want to do a for each var connection in connections, we want to do a await clients dot client of my connection dot connection ID dot send asynchronous, and this is going to be called receive follow new. And we want to pass in here the number of follows, right? So if I look at my data access layer dot read follows by room ID, then this is a follow DTO of every single one that you have. And I don't necessarily want to get all of them, I just want to get the count. No, we want to get all of them. Like that. And that should be it to create a follow. And if this thing was to error out here, so we'll do a return. So if we get all the way down here, we'll do a receive follow of a null. Okay, this thing's almost the same for the request unfollow. The first thing we want to do is read the room. Then we want to get our application ID. And then I want to do another read follow, which if I look at this, we're going to have it as a room ID and a good application user ID. So this is a room ID and a application user ID. And now I want to say if my follow does not equal to null, then we can do this if my await data access layer dot delete follow asynchronous of my follow and my application user ID, then we can do a new send asynchronous called receive follow, and we'll pass in here a null, and then we want to get the owner, and then we want to send all the follows for the owner. And if we don't do that, then we want to do this. Okay, we need to implement these new functions. So that's in the data access layer. And at the top of this, we can just extract the, what is that called? Implement the interface, which is down here. Okay, so this is the first one, and we want to do a using var context equals new application db context. And in this one, we want to first get my follows. So it's a var follows equals await my context dot follows dot where my s dot room ID is equal to room ID and it's active. And we want to do a toList asynchronous. And we're going to call this entities. And then we're going to do for each var entity in entities. And in this one, you want to include the application user. And this needs to be in a virtual asynchronous method. And if I look at here, we want to make this a VM. So we'll have a var VMs equals a new list of follow VM. And then for each entity, I want to do a VMs.add a mapper.map of my follow VM of my entity. And then here we can do a return my VMs.toArray. Okay, we can copy this one to here, and it's almost exactly the same as a virtual asynchronous task. And we want to include the room where the application user is equal to the application user ID. And this needs to be a VM. Okay, this one, public virtual asynchronous task called read follow. We can bring this one in, and it's going to be including the room and the application user, and we want the one where the ID is equal to the follow ID. And all we're going to do is return this VM that I'm making here. like that. The next one is this follow. And this one we can do where my room ID is equal to room ID and the s.application user ID is equal to application user ID and it's active. Okay, we have a create follow, which is a virtual asynchronous task. And in this one, you want to say var follow entity equals await your context dot follows dot where my and it's going to be a first or default application user is equal to application user ID, and the s dot room ID is equal to request dot room ID, and it's active. So if my entity is equal to null, because it doesn't exist, then we want to create it, which is going to be a entity is equal to a mapper.map from my request to a follow. And then it's a entity.application user ID, if it ever updates. Like that, and then we want to do a context.add, context.follows.add, entity, and then we want to do a if my await context.save changes asynchronous is greater than 0, then I want to return my await read follow asynchronous of my entity.id. Otherwise, I just want to return null. And for the last one, it's fairly similar to this one. We're going to get my follow where my ID is equal to the follow ID, and the application user ID is equal to the application user ID, and it's active. And if it is not equal to null, then you want to do a return await. Nope, it's a context.follows.remove entity, and then if my await context.save changes asynchronous is greater than 0, then you can do a return true, and you can just do a return this like that, and this can be a false. Okay, let's move these up into a more reasonable place, up with rooms. Looks good. We can rebuild it now. And this time I want to select my startup project, and in package NuGet manager, we are going to do a code first, and I want to add a migration here called added follows. And then I want to do an update database. Okay, So it added it, but we want to remove that now. So I want to do a remove migration. And it'll remove the last one. First thing before I go and modify that is on my create follow asynchronous. And this one we want to do application user equals await context dot application users dot first or default asynchronous s, where my s dot id is equal to application user id and it's active. And we want to do the include the room. Come on. And then we want to say, and my application user does not equal to null, and my entity, and my request.room ID does not equal to my application user.room.id. Just a little caveat in there. So back here in the application database context, where I'm creating my model, here, underneath room, I can say room has many follows with one room. And then we want to say my application user has many follows with one application user. And now we can do that again. And now we can do an update database. That was it. So at this point we can go back to multiple startup project and we can look at our SQL server. Which is here. And we can refresh it. And I have some bad tables in here, but I should have follows now, and I do. So we're good to go. So on source tree, I can go ahead and commit this as an OpenDJ54, and my time is 45 minutes, and my comment is added backend for follows to rooms and application users. And we'll commit that out. Okay, so now let's see if that's working. That might not be working now. All right, so I'm gonna take a short break. I'll be back in 10 minutes. When we come back, we're gonna be working with the follows on the front end. So we've implemented the back end as well as all the methods for SignalR on the back end. I'm pretty confident everything's going to work on the first attempt on the back end. So now what we're going to do is on the front end, we need to add in the SignalR functions to handle follows, and then we need to add in the text labels so that you can actually see the number of follows on a channel, and then the capability to click a button and to follow. So thanks for staying with me. We'll be back in 10 minutes, and enjoy the break. I'll see you in just a little bit.